Okay, now we're recording, so we can share this. You can see the recording later. And so, as I mentioned before, today we're going to be learning about pest diseases and how to control this in the proper way. And well, how is the class? Just any question that you have at some point, feel free to type in the chat. So I have two screens here, so I can see when you sent a message. Um, or just unmute your microphone and ask. Feel free to ask. And also, uh, mute your microphone so sometimes the background noise doesn't interrupt our class, right? So let's start. I don't know, it's why this. Okay, perfect. Yeah, it's working. So why this matters? So why to take a class or even be reading and learning about diseases? So probably if you have been gardening, you know that there is something, always there is something affecting our plants, even if it's indoors, right? Because sometimes indoor gardening, so we think that everything is closed. So uh, yeah, less risk to have some pests, some diseases. But still, sometimes we find um, anything there. It can be mealybugs, aphids, or sometimes our pets. They can be destroying our plants. So for Allegheny County, we have a short growing season. We have humid summers, so that's perfect for diseases. And we have this high pest pressure. So especially right now, like July, August, because of the weather, it's raining some days and the humidity is high, and that's like the perfect environment for pests and diseases to go out there and start eating your plants or affecting your plants somehow. So when we have the pests and diseases, also it's not only about our plants getting sick and just not beautiful. Also, we lose time and money and effort, right? So that's something that we don't want. So that's why early detection that's equal to easier and cheaper and more effective control. And especially cheaper because sometimes we don't know what's affecting our plant. So we go and buy a lot of products and we need only one. We so in that case, or we can go and buy a product and then that doesn't work and then going back to the store and buying another thing. So that's why we read, we come to these classes, and we learn about pests and diseases, how to control, and because they can be really challenging and a little pain to control sometimes, right? So here for this area, because of course, pests and diseases, we have a lot, like millions of species, like microscopic and big animals too. So just for this area, Allegheny County, southern New York, um, so the most common ones, so I'm going to be showing you the most common uh, issues, like we call anything, pest diseases. So anything that can be affecting your plants. So when we know you don't need to be an expert to know exactly what's affecting your plant, but today you're learning some of these. So something is not right, like you know that we're or the plants are in trouble, like something is happening when we see something like in these pictures. So wilting, just the plant doesn't look good. It's like drying. They start changing the shape or the color, sometimes both color and shape. So leaf curling, any distortion in the plant. We can see mold, mildew, anything like cotton-like structure growing on the plants or the fruits. And well, this is common and this is easy to identify that, yeah, that's sick. There is something growing there and eating our plants. And also dropping the flowers or the leaves or any part of the plant. So especially this one is an indoor plant, an orchid. So we can see that it's dropping the flowers, and this is normal after blooming, but not when you just bring the plant to your house, and then a couple days later it's just dropping in the pots even before opening, in this case for orchids. So in that case, it's like, it's not healthy. Especially here, we can see the leaves also just down. It's not usually the V shape that is a healthy orchid. So in that case, something may be happening there, root rot or, well, any pest or disease. So that's not normal, right? Also, when we see anything chewing our plants, like we can see that happening. So here we have an example with this potato box. Or when the plants, they are growing very slow, or you see from all the plants that you have out there, there are some really tiny ones that they are not growing. And you provide the same amount of fertilizer, water, but they are not growing. And even like you can see in this picture here, um, this is corn and it's producing it's producing the cap. Sorry, I need to drink something. It's producing the cap, the corn cap, and it's really small plant. It's not the right size. So in that case, the plant is feeling that it's dying and it needs to produce something. Sometimes it happens also with the flowers indoors, like going back to the orchid example. They are blooming and we think that they are happy because they are blooming. But it's really the plant sometimes feels that it's dying. So they prefer to bloom or produce any fruits early so they can leave any seeds. In this case, we don't have seeds for orchids, but they bloom anyway. So when we see something like this, it's like, oh, yeah, something is happening. It's not normal to see the colors. Something that I didn't include in this slide is the change of color too. The plant looks healthy and then start changing color, yellow, and then brown. And that's normal for the bottom leaves, but not for the top. So when we see the top of the plant or in between, so in the middle of the plant, it's turning yellow and then brown and dropping the leaves. So another sign that something is going on. That's not normal. So I mentioned before, let me move this bar here. Common garden pests and diseases in New York. So we have a couple that they are the common ones that always we have in the garden. It's inevitable sometimes to have at least one of these ones. So when we are growing tomatoes, we can have tomato, the hornworm, this green one. Sometimes it's difficult just to when you're watering your garden, it's difficult to see because they are green, you see. So it's not that easy to easily spot that one. So that's why it's nice. Just the first tip for this class is when you're watering, when you're weeding, fertilizing, just take a look to the plant, the leaves under the leaf, and just in general the stems, just to make sure that nothing is there growing or walking or eating any part of the plant. And so this is one highly destructive because that can eat a lot of the foliage, the leaves of the plant. We also have cabbage loopers and cutworms. So these yellow guys here, not only for cabbage, these cutworms, they can be in bushes, ornamental plants, and they can eat the whole plant. They are not just like, oh, eating one part of the plant and that's it. No, they can go and multiply a lot, like they reproduce a lot. And then you have a lot of these uh, yellow caterpillars around and no leaves. The plant is completely defoliated. We also have the flea beetles. You can see they can reproduce a lot and also destroy completely the plant. Any squash bugs, cucumber beetles, these yellow ones. About the cucumber beetles, we can find these like yellow with these dots, but the common ones for this region, I just didn't find the picture, is a same structure like this one, yellow, but instead of these black dots, they have like strips, just perfectly straight, vertical here. So yeah, that's cucumber beetles. Also, is that's a pest. And common ones, like probably number one, aphids. So aphids, they are everywhere, and they can be black or like this one's green, or sometimes like red, like brown, reddish color, and also white flies. So you shake a little bit, for example, tomatoes, talking about tomatoes, you shake a little bit the plant and then you see something, tiny one, that I call something because you cannot really identify what's that, but it's just like something flying around the plant. So in that case, is this tiny, tiny um, insect, white, the name is white flies, right? So in that case, they also can be um, aphids. They can be reproducing a lot. So in that case, that's the common one, but these ones are the easiest to control, and I'm going to show you how to do that. And spider mites. So we cannot see the spider mite because they are tiny. They are very, very small. So unless you have a magnifying glass or entomology magnifying glass, you can see them. They are like these tiny, tiny mites. Red. The color is red. But it's easy to spot because, especially roses, they love roses. Um, you can see something like this cobweb, spider web. Um, so something to I want to mention something here, and is that it doesn't mean that every time that you see spider web or cobweb around your plants is like, oh, now I have spider mites. And this something that happened just recently. I bought a couple orchids for a workshop, and then I saw something like this. So I didn't have the time right there to take the sample to uh, observe that under the microscope. And because of the very thin, it's not that the typical cobweb that you see around the house for bigger spiders. So I assumed it was spider mites because it was just very fine cobweb like this. So, and okay, I have spider mites, and I took that one apart, that plant apart. And then when I was going to treat the plant and spray, because sometimes just spraying alcohol it works for the spider mites. And then I was repotting the plant when something jumped on my hand. So it was an actual spider, a big spider. So in that case, that's not a pest. That is helping because if we have bigger spiders around the plants, so we can see the cobweb, the spider web, but they are helping to control uh, any other insect around the plant. So that was something good. So the orchids, they were healthy, no mites, but sometimes we can confuse that. The easiest way is just with a magnifying glass, and you can see these red dots. And so that's easy for spider mites. And they are common for these areas too. Now, diseases. So diseases is also pest, right? We used to call pest for insects, right? Anything bigger, a fly, any bugs, any insects around caterpillars, anything big, right? But and to differentiate that, we call diseases to something that is causing these signs on the plants. But they are also pests. Is any organism a pest? Is any organism that can be this affecting our plants somehow? So that's why I mentioned even we can have pests at home, and it can be our cat, our dog, and it's just like what? So of course we don't consider our pets like pests, right? But if it's affecting our plants because probably they are playing, they are chewing on the leaves, so that's a pest for that particular plant, right? Or bigger animals. Like we can have birds, we can have any organism. The difference with diseases, so it's also a pest, but the difference is that it's microscopic. So it can be bacteria, fungi, nematodes, anything microscopic that we cannot see easily, but we can see the signs and the symptoms of that. So in that case, we have, for example, late and early blight. Both we have blight here in Allegheny County. We have both. It's not widely distributed, so some cases reported But if you notice something like this, so for example, late blight, it's a microorganism that is causing these like gray spots, and they look, especially after a rain, heavy rain, or watering the plants a lot. You can see, especially potatoes, for tomatoes, the plants, they can be destroyed in just a couple days, and everything looks gray, like this, just this brown, gray, like mostly gray spots. Early blight is a different microorganism, and in that case, you can see these spots like rings. So they grow, like you can see these rings growing um, around like this. If you pay attention to that, it looks like rings, and then they start growing. And powdery mildew, so it's literally like powder. You can see like anything gray or white, especially white on top of the leaves, especially like cucumbers, any uh, cucurbites, so melon, watermelon, squash. You can see that a lot, or beans, green beans. So also we can have the downy mildew. So in that case, we don't see the spots I mean, above the leaves, but under the leaves, and on top of the leaf, we can see these yellow spots like that. We also have septoria. That's very common around Allegheny County, Steuben County, these areas near counties. Septoria, a lot of tomato plants with this one. You can see like these spots, a lot of these tiny spots, and they start just turning the leaves brown and then yellow, and then you see the whole plant, the stems, the leaves, everything with that. So because of that, it's not really affecting the fruit, the tomato itself, but the plant. And if the plant doesn't have a good area to keep doing photosynthesis, so in that case, the plant starts dying, right? So we don't have good quality tomatoes. And that spreads quickly. So be on the look for this one too. And bacteria. Sometimes we can see talking about tomatoes, something like this. So we think that it's a fungal, any fungus like fungi, or um, something like an insect maybe, because it looks dry. It doesn't look like any like this, like a cotton structure or any fuzzy growth. Nothing. It's just dry. In that case, it's bacteria. So these are bacteria spots. And also we have fusarium, that's the term, the name of this pathogen. And you see the plants, this is in tomato is also common. And the plants, they start dying from top to bottom. So you see the plant just like completely like dehydrated, like dry, like wilting, and it's like something is going on. So basically, just quickly to explain that this Fusarium wilt, it's a microorganism, and the structure that they have is like a banana shape, but pointy. So in that case, that blocks any uh, like inside. Just how to explain this easier, just blocks the stem inside, and the plant basically cannot drink anything, cannot take any nutrients. So yeah, the plants start starving and dying in that way. That's how you see from top to bottom the plant wilting and dying. Now, we need to identify when we're talking about disease, when we're talking about stress, because sometimes the plant is not doing right, it's not doing well, and we can see signs of trouble, like the plants, they are wilting or yellow or purple, or they are just not growing at all, or something like it's not normal for that plant. But we also have stress. The plants, they can get stressed. So in that case, for stress, we can have heat, we can have overwatering. That's a common reason for indoor plants when we overwater our plants. The transplant shock. So for example, we buy uh, our plants from the greenhouse, and you can feel the heat under the greenhouse, right? And then you take the plants, and probably it's a cold day, especially late afternoon, night, and it can be a chilly night. And you take the plants from that heat directly to the car or um, to your house, to your garden outside. So, of course, we can have a shock, temperature shock or humidity, especially temperature. That's common reason. Or if it's too dry, especially for herbs, you see that basil is a hardy plant, but is susceptible to drought. So in that case, when it's too dry, if the substrate is dry, the plant looks like it's dying. So that's why I called basil like a little dramatic plant because it's uh, hardy one. It doesn't really need a lot of fertilizer and being there taking care of the plant all the time. No, basically it grows and it keeps happy. But if you're overwatering or underwatering, if it's too dry, then start dying. Even if it's just a couple hours, you see the plant just die. So that's why I call it's a little dramatic. So in that case, we need to identify when it's stress and when it's disease. When it's something that, okay, yeah, we have fungi, we have bacteria, we have something there, or virus. That's another uh, disease. So in that case, when how to identify? So like I mentioned before, we are not experts. So okay, in that case, we you can contact us, right? The cooperative extension, sending the pictures or bringing the samples to the office. But also just by eye. You can see the garden or your plants if it's indoors. And when you see everything is symmetrical, that all of them same time they are wilting, they are turning yellow or turning purple. So, for example, for orchids, they can be turning purple at some point. The leaves are purple, and it's all of them. So, and basically all of them, or 90% of the plants out there, they are uh, being affected by something. So in that case, we're like, okay, it can be stress when it's all of them. Now, disease, they start usually in a spot. So we call that a hot spot. Like the internet, remember the hot spot. So it can be a hot spot, just one plant or one part of the plant. And then around that, you see that it keep over the days and weeks, it keep growing. Or you see a spot here and then something in another plant, and then around those plants, then you see that growing, like that pattern. In that case, okay, now we're talking about disease, or especially if you see clear signs of disease, like the spots, like this gray, for example, blight is easy, or the powder mildew is easy to control, not to identify. The septoria, easy, right? But talking about, for example, the orchids, they are turning purple. So in that case, too much light or the plant is turning yellow, the leaves are yellow, and it's all of them. So probably nutrition, right? Right? It's a nutritional problem. So that's why we're learning about this. And I know you came here to learn about what, okay, how to control all of that. But to control properly, we need to know what is there. What are we controlling? Because, for example, you have a stressed plant and you think that it's a disease because probably it's yellow and something like this yellow color, not like this, of course. And you go and buy a fungicide. Sometimes fungicides, they can be really expensive, a bottle of 40, $60. And then applying, so not only money, time to go and buy the product, time to mix, time to spray, and then nothing is happening. So that's why we need to learn about this first before going to actually trying any control, any method to control. So to start doing that, we have something probably you have heard at some point that is IPM, Integrated Pest Management. So this is beautiful because in that way we can we know how to say it, we can control the pests and diseases in the perfect way. That's basically what we do with IPM, Integrated Pest Management. So in that case, uh, we have four main like steps in the IPM. You don't need to be an expert to just studying IPM. You can be reading tons of books. having master degree, PhD, and learning this for many years. So basically, for home gardening, we don't need to be the experts, but at least knowing these four main steps, we we apply IPM at home. So when we have IPM, that's smart gardening, and it means less spraying, and also less spraying equals less money, less time, right? A cheaper control method. So number one, monitor. So when we go out there in the garden and we're weeding or fertilizing or doing something there, and we find something flying around the plant and boop, it landed in one of your cucumbers, one of your flowers, one of your garden beds. That doesn't mean that you need to spray immediately, right? So in that case, you go out and check your garden at least twice a week. Because sometimes we have the garden and we keep busy, so that's why gardening. We have a busy life, gardening probably is not the right hobby or the right activity, right? Because even when the plants they can be doing the photosynthesis, having processing everything internally that they are not like an animal that you need to be feeding 3 times a day or 2 times a day. Uh, that doesn't mean that they can be neglected unless you have succulents that you can just go and water them and check on them every 2 or 3 weeks sometimes. But when we have a garden, especially vegetables, flowers, so we need to be watering, fertilizing, and checking for insects or diseases at least twice a week. So you go out there, you see probably some aphids, these green insects that I mentioned before, or black ones. Okay, but you see that the plant is healthy, right? So in that case, and there is not really a concern. You just keep an eye on that plant. Just monitor the plants. You maybe see some Japanese beetle. Oh, now we need to pay attention to that one because sometimes only one is a reason to be controlling them. Okay, so we see only one. Okay, we can just remove that one and drop in a soapy water solution, or some people they just squeeze them. Uh, well, that's up to you how you want to control them. Uh, okay, but all the plants they are healthy, no more. So probably it was just one beetle that was landing there and then going away. Not a problem. You keep an eye. It doesn't mean that you need to control. Now, identify. So that when you see more of them growing around or you see some insects, even if they don't look beautiful, sometimes we have in mind that an insect, a beneficial insect is like ladybugs. And yeah, ladybugs are nice and you allow them to grow there in the garden because they love aphids. They are eating a lot of aphids. So they are controlling the pest for you. So in that case, if you know that, yeah, that's beneficial. We have insects that they are good for the garden, but sometimes they don't look that beautiful. Sometimes they don't look that nice, and they are still beneficial. So in that case, it's good to identify. So here is where we can help you with that. So when you have any insect or any bug, like we call, right, commonly called a bug, an insect, um, you can take the picture and send an email, and we can help for trying to identify. Sometimes it's difficult to identify just by looking at a picture. So you can bring that sample to the office. We can probably tell you, it's better to bring that to the office. And then we under the microscope, and we can try to identify what is that. And sometimes there is not a problem. Sometimes it's that is a pest, but with the rain, it's gonna go away. That's an example for aphids. So aphids, you don't really need to be spraying insecticides because even if you have a lot of them, just with rain or watering the plants, just watering the plants that can flush the the aphids out of the plant. So in that case, we know to identify in when we identify the culprit, so we know if we need to go and buy the insecticide, and if we need to go for something organic, that is no, it doesn't need to be something that heavy, or if, yeah, you need to really go and buy an insecticide, something more heavy, something toxic. In that case, we go for step number 3. We decide, do we need to spray something or not? Do I need to contact the cooperative extension office and ask or not? So when to decide? So when you see the plant is actually being eaten by something, these insects are here, and now you see, for example, you can see the aphids, and the plant is happy, healthy. So the aphids, they are not really affecting the plant, but the aphids, they produce some honeydew, and that honeydew attracts some pests. So, for example, you see the aphids, and after a couple days or weeks, you can see ants coming, and then the ants are affecting your plants, are eating your plants. So that's a common example. It's a secondary pest. So in that case, yeah, you need to act. You need to do something about that. So in that case, okay, contact the cooperative extension office or start reading, some Googling, but some reliable sources, not anything from TikTok or any of these platforms, because sometimes we have good, like experienced gardeners on YouTube, on these platforms, right? Social media. But there are some people that they just copy content, or they just see using AI or using any not reliable source, and they tell you, oh yeah, if you want to control a fungus on your plants, spray um, vinegar. When that's like, no, vinegar it's an herbicide. So maybe it's good controlling fungus or anything, disinfecting surfaces when you're cleaning your house or cleaning any surface, but not for plants. For plants, it's gonna kill the plant. And that sounds like too much, or like, nah, I'm not doing that. But I have had I have had these calls. Someone saying I sprayed vinegar, um, on my plants because I saw this online. Someone was saying to spray, and then now my zucchinis, they are dying. So in that case, yeah, I'm sorry, you just sprayed your plants with herbicide, a natural herbicide. And so that's why it's good to identify, decide, and then act. When we act is when we go and choose the least harmful solution. So we can start with something organic, and then when we have a lot, like a heavy infestation of a pest, now is when some organic is not going to control really that, or it can take weeks. So if your plants are in critical condition, that is when we need to go for the last resource, that is the chemical option, right? So talking about chemical and natural, so we can have the natural and organic pest control. So they sound like similar, like or the same, but they are not. Natural is when you don't need to act, you don't need to do anything. You just allow the pest now, the insects to grow there and be controlling pests. So for example, the ladybugs, they control a lot of aphids. They love aphids, and they keep eating, and they go one after the other aphid. We have the lace wings. So in that case, they also help controlling insects. You can see these ones, um, even not only the garden, just around your house. You can see these beautiful ones. And they are not like, please don't squish them or kill them, because they are actually going after different insects in the house. And also, we have wasps. So not only this one, we have multiple wasps that they can be small or big ones. Sometimes you see that, oh, it can be dangerous because you can see like long, like some stiletto, like a long, looks like sting, something that they can sting, but they are not going to sting you. Um, Here at the abdomen, you see something growing. You don't need to know exactly the name, like very long. Uh, for these wasps. And in that case, just allow them to be out there because they are parasitic. So usually this long structure is used to like inject some eggs inside of the aphids or inside of caterpillars, and they can be controlling, like naturally controlling your pest. So it's when you start studying something like this, like entomology, and but that's called biological control. So when you use biological control, you see that nature is sometimes is heavy to see, is how to say, what's the word, ruthless. That is like in an alien movie sometimes when you see the caterpillar and then the wasp larvae, they are growing inside, and at some point, boop, a new wasp comes out of the caterpillar. So probably that's where the movies about aliens and all this coming out of the body, they take inspiration in this, the insects, because that's something that happens, and we cannot easily perceive or see something like that happening. Or praying mantis. These ones, they can be a little, I don't know how to describe them. They are beautiful and they can be controlling a lot of insects, cockroach, like bigger insects, but sometimes they are not that nice. And if we have big praying mantis, probably you have seen some videos online that they can be controlling or, well, killing also good beneficial insects or even birds or bigger animals, even snakes. So sometimes they can be killing any insects or birds that we don't want them to be eating and controlling, because they are not like the ladybugs that they only go after the aphids. They are only going after aphids, or some parasitic wasps that they only control eggs or larvae of any pest, right? Just specifically to a pest. In this case, for praying mantis, even you can get them online and buy that and release them in your garden. They help controlling a lot of pests because they can go for anything they can eat. So they are not selective for only one. But in that case, just take a look. If you're gonna use praying mantis, just keep an eye on them. If they are going after the bees or the bumblebees or any of your uh, good beneficial insects or organisms around. And now we have organic. So that's natural. You don't need to do anything. You just release them or just allow them to be there and they control insects. Natural. Now, organic is when you're spraying something, but it's something that is not chemical. What is that something? That can be an oil, that can be insecticidal soap, that can be anything really. But is natural. It comes from a plant or for natural compounds, right? So in that case, also when we are the ones picking, like in this case, Japanese beetles, just hand picking and or covering your rows with any row covers or spraying anything organic that I'm gonna mention later, like organic control, biological control, and it's something like this. So we can have some commercial products that you can find online or in the store. And we have for insects or for diseases. So when we're talking about insects, anytime that your crop, your plants are being affected by an insect, you need an insecticide. So even if it's natural or chemical one, organic one, natural, no, organic or chemical one, you need insecticide. This is what when I mentioned before that if you go and buy a fungicide because you see anything on the plant, you go to the store and you see, yeah, this is controlling a lot of diseases. When you spray something like that, so it's not going to work because you need an insecticide. So we have natural biological control insecticides. So in that case, it's called, the right term is myco-insecticide. Myco is, or myco-insecticide, myco-insecticide is fungus, so fungi. So we have a fungus here eating an insect, and the fungus is affecting specifically that insect. So when you're using products like this, like for example, Beauveria bassiana, these names, they come from Latin. So that's the name. Probably commercially, you can find that under different names. But just pay attention about the main ingredient. So the main ingredient, the main compound, Beauveria bassiana. So something like this. You can take the screenshot of this or contact, and I can always share this with you. So when we have Beauveria bassiana, that's an example, is this first example here. That's effective. It's a fungus that is affecting whiteflies, aphids, and thrips, caterpillars. And you see like this. So you spray the product, and after a couple days, even weeks, you see on your plants the insects like this. So the white like powder that you see on top, that's a lot, like tons, probably millions of spores of that fungus because that start affecting the insect from the inside, or sometimes the outside start eating the insect, literally eating the insect, and then all the white uh, powder that you see is all the spores. Once the insect is dead and these fungus start spraying spores in naturally by air that can go on top of another insect and then start colonizing that insect and start eating that. And it's not going to affect your pets, like your cats or your dogs or anything. Even for livestock, I'm not sure here in the US because I'm not the expert for livestock. I don't know the regulations about that. Down in Colombia, where I come from, they spray the cows with Beauveria bassiana because that's not going to affect the cow, and it's going to affect the ticks. So any ticks that they are there um, drinking the blood of the cow, when they spray the cow with this, it's going to affect the ticks, but not the cow. And it's organic, so it's not going to affect really the meat or anything else around, only the insects. Now, the question, if probably you have a question at some this point about, well, but what if that fungus can affect good insects? So that's probably something that we need to read more about that. Um, but for example, bees, they are not really affected by these ones. So there are some studies, and we can keep learning about this if at some point we read that, yeah, it's affecting bees. But in general, so far, after decades of research, um, it's not really like Beauveria bassiana controls pollinators, for example. So in that case, it's mostly for these hard shell insects. So that's why. Because, for example, Beauveria bassiana is eating the chitin, from the chitin, sorry about my pronunciation in this case, from the insects. So this hard shell insect. Bees, they don't have that hard shell. So in that case, this fungus is not really gonna affect that insect, that bee. We have metarhizium that's also common. Like you can find this online. It's commercially produced and sold, mostly online because it's not that common. Like for small home gardening, that's especially in big like greenhouses or larger crops. But you can get that and use at home too. So metarhizium, same concept. Is anything. No, it's a fungus eating your hard shell insects. So in that case, also for any I forgot the name, uh, jumper, grasshopper, or any pest that you can have eating your plants. And you see, you spray, and then you see them like this. Is in that case for Beauveria is white, for metarhizium is green, like this green color. And also we have cordyceps. That's not that common. Beauveria and metarhizium, they are common, but cordyceps, it's not really that common commercially. Sometimes you can find a mix of these three of them. And in that case, it's a little more gross to see because once it colonizes the insect, it produces these structures with a lot of spores. So it looks like roots, like a plant root, but in that case, going up. And that is controlling whiteflies, tarantulas, spiders, and many insects, not only for one specific one. So that's
Question,
something interesting to see because you actually can see that happening. Yes.
um, do you know if any of these have been successful against late blight?
Against what? Sorry, again.
Late blight,
Blight?
late blight.
No. In that case, like I
Yeah,
mentioned, we're
because
talking
they're
about insecticides. So this is to
yeah,
control insects and not
right,
diseases.
but right, but they are fungus derived. So I wondered if they'd been used against late blight, if you know of anything like that.
Um, yes, about this one. Where is this one? So I'm going in that direction.
Oh, you're going to get to it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Uh,
No, I wondered about because cordyceps is the name of an edible mushroom.
yep.
So I
That's
wondered if that, yeah, if that fungus had been used against late blight.
uh, Gotcha. No, in this case, about cordyceps, well, specifically this one, because yeah, like you mentioned, there is a cordyceps one that is it grows bigger and not on insects, and of course we can eat that one. So in that
Yeah,
case, cordyceps
yeah,
fumos, in this case, fumosorosia, that's the term.
yeah.
It's a different strain, and in that case, is gonna eat the insects, and that's why it forms these like fruit bodies. So of course
Oh, okay.
we're not gonna eat that, right? So it's a
Right. Yeah.
different, yeah, it's a different strain. And here, this slide is about insects. We're going to be controlling insects. So if you have an insect problem and you want to try biological control, that's something nice with this is that you don't need to be spraying and spraying and spraying all the time, like with a regular chemical product, right? That you need to keep spraying sometimes every week. Um, in that case, you spray, and then after probably 2 or 3 weeks, you go spray again, but you don't really need to be spraying that often because you have tons of spores, right? So these spores, they can go on different insects and keep controlling more insects. Only insects, right? And these are fungi. Now, for insects, you were talking controlling insects, but now with bacteria, not using a fungus or fungi, the mix of these ones, but with bacteria. So there is a famous one that is this one, BT. So usually you can find commercially for like BT. That is for this, Bacillus thuringiensis. So in that case, is also insecticide, but it's not going to affect the adults, like in this case that's going to affect the larvae. So insects that they in the life cycle, they have um they have a larvae stage. Sorry. You can use BT, and it's a bacteria that they need to eat. So you spray on the plants. They are going to keep eating the plant, but once they eat that bacteria, that creates a poisoning effect, and they control the caterpillars. So this is a healthy caterpillars. And then after a couple days or weeks, you see the caterpillars on your plants or on the soil, like this, like brown or black. And like inside is like liquefied, like in that case, that's the control from this Bacillus thuringiensis. BT, that's the common product, commercial name, just BT. Now, for fungus gnats, so this one, that looks big, that's zoom in effect for these fungus gnats because just by eye, what you can see is like a tiny black insect flying around your plants, especially indoors. So this is an indoor pest. Mostly indoors is very annoying because they go after any indoor plant. It's not really affecting your plants. It's mostly because they like the soil, the substrate that you have your plants in, and they go there and lay the eggs. So only one female can lay over 200 eggs. So in that case, you have a lot of fungus gnats around, and they are really annoying because they try to look for wet spots on your face too. So your eyes, your mouth, your nose. Um, so they are difficult to control, and also they are not directly eating your plant or affecting your plant in that way, but they also can be attracting pest, more pest. So that's why fungus gnats, so they can be producing some disease on your plant. And not directly the insect, but as a secondary infection. So in that case, for this one, we also have a Bacillus thuringiensis, but the strain is Israelensis, like the country Israel. Remember by that, Israelensis. So when you find a product around here, the common product is mosquito bits, like BITS, mosquito bits. I'm not sponsored by anything like that. It's for educational purposes that we can find these bacteria, BT israelensis. You mix with water your plants with that, and after, because it's going to affect only the larvae, in that case, you need to keep spraying every week until 5 weeks, completing the life cycle of the fungus gnats. And you see the population going from 100 to down to 2% or 1% or even zero. I have seen cases of zero. They die completely. Or sometimes you see only one or two gnats around, but not a lot of them. So it's really, really effective against fungus gnats. And mosquitoes. If you have mosquitoes at home and you have a pond or any water sources, you can spray this bacteria and it's going to affect only larvae for these insects. We were talking about bacteria and fungi to control insects, right? Now, how about diseases? So we have, for diseases, you need a fungicide, right? Fungicide is anything that kills a fungus. So in that case, we can use something natural too. When we are talking about biological control, we can use this one. So there are some commercial products that contains a trichoderma or trichoderma. From Latin, this is trichoderma, and that's this guy. So is this fungus, and it's feeding from a fungus. So it's a fungus that is gonna eat another fungus. So in that case, it's not only for one pest. So it can be fusarium, it can be different pests, different diseases around in the soil. That's mostly in the soil, but you can spray on your plants too, but mostly it lives in the soil. And also it provides like a shield for the plant, for the roots. And so that's basically the fungus start looking for spores or any hyphae of different like a pathogen for your plants, and then eating from that fungus. So that's a good competitor. It's a good one. Is this green one? In the soil, you cannot see really the spots. It can be white in the soil because that green color comes when it's exposed to the light. And sometimes the soil smells like coconut. So that's when some indicator, that's a sign that you may have this trichoderma in your soil, because the smell is like sweet, not really coconut, but close to that smell like coconut. So it's that smell. And you can spray, and that can, if the soil is moist and like good temperature, probably you can spray that every spring or early summer, because that doesn't overwinter usually. So it likes heat, so 60 degrees and above. Now the conventional options, that's something that we don't need to explain a lot, because we have for insects, insecticides, for fungus or fungi, fungicides, nematodes, nematicides. For virus, when you have a virus, you go to the cooperative extension office or to the laboratory and they say, yeah, you have a virus. In that case, you have really many options to treat the virus. And the few options, they are very expensive and it's not really that effective. So when you have any virus, it's better to remove the plants and throw away. But when you have insects, fungus, nematodes, bacteria, you can use a product, chemical options. This is like the last option when you have to apply an insecticide. For this is a commercial example, just for educational purposes. I mentioned this, like Sevin or Seven Dust or these insecticides. So that's chemical. In that case, please read the label carefully, protect yourself. I just remember the question, Deb's question about late blight. So using trichoderma, there has been studies to control late blight, but the problem is that late blight is not really a fungus. That's a oomycete. That is a microorganism that behaves like an animal but grows like a fungus. So in that case, it's really hard to control. When you have late blight, it's better just to remove the plants. And there is not really a biological control for that one. In that case, it's better to go for a chemical option and just avoid a lot of water because that's the way that it spreads by any uh, any way that the water goes on the plants or keep going around the soil. Um, so that swims, like actually the spores, they can swim through the water. That doesn't go uh, on the air. So if you have to use chemical, anything, fungicide, insecticide, nematicide, bactericide, once we identify the culprit and we know that we need something chemical, like right now we need something chemical because it's affecting something quick. And in that case, go for the chemical options, but please read the label. Always read the label. I know it's like a lot of information in this tiny letter that you need a magnifying glass. Sometimes online you can find the product and find the PDF with all the instructions, the same label, but bigger. So it's easier, it's friendly to read. And always respect especially for food gardening, respect the PHI, that is the pre-harvest interval. That if the product is telling you that you cannot harvest after at least waiting 7 days after you apply the insecticide, so in that case, you must wait for the 7 days. If not, your cucumbers, your fruits, vegetables, they can have um, that insecticide, especially for systemic insecticides that they go inside of the plant. So always read and respect that interval. If it's telling you that it's just a couple hours, also after spraying, how many hours you need to wait before going into the garden again. Because, of course, especially insecticides that can really also affect you. Like there are unfortunately, some cases where workers, they are using something like this, not really using a protective equipment, barefoot, you can see, and all this product goes directly to the skin that can touch any surface of your skin, and your pores absorb the chemical. So in that case, be careful. Don't do this. This is the perfect example to not follow this example. Um, because yeah, unfortunately, some people they have died uh, spraying after spraying insecticides, especially insecticides. Some insecticides they are really really dangerous, like highly toxic, especially with the red labels that they have these red labels. And avoid spraying during the blooming because of course we want to protect pollinators too. So if you have to do it, okay. But if you can protect pollinators, so try not to spray during blooming. Or if you need to spray during blooming, so in that case, it's probably the only option to be spraying at night or after dusk when the pollinators they are not active. So prevention is the key. Uh, like we mentioned in previous classes, crop rotation that helps so we don't have pest or disease resistance, and mulching that also helps for pests that they like to go in the soil. For example, beetles, many beetles, most of the beetles, they like to go and lay eggs in the soil. And so mulching, watering early in the morning, not at night or late afternoon, because usually that is what it's the perfect environment for diseases. Disease-resistant varieties, that doesn't mean that it's a modified organism, GMO. And when you spray the plants properly, that allows airflow. That also helps for diseases to reduce the risk for diseases, and disinfect your tools when you're pruning. Now you can send to identify the pests and diseases, you can send the pictures, but please, you can help us to help you. And it's when you take the pictures, not like the first example, that the leaves is all chewed and then like no idea. It's not even, it's blurry and like no idea what's going on. No context, no picture of what's eating or nothing, right? So in this case, this is a good picture because we can see that we have here some potato bugs. And when you tell and describe what's happening, you tell us about recent weather, watering, how long ago did it started, is affecting just one of your plants or all of them after one. Sometimes it helps when you tell us, well, someone gave me this plant, and after this, I noticed that all of my plants they are getting sick. So in that case, okay, you know that it was something that's you brought to the house or to the garden. So the context is good. That helps. And sometimes it's difficult, like I mentioned before, just by eye. Well, this is an easy one for potato bugs, but sometimes it's not that easy. Some insects they are not that easy, or caterpillars they sometimes they look identical to another caterpillars and they can be affecting different plants. So in that case, sometimes we need to ask you, no, bring the sample to the office and we can study the insect or the disease or what's going on. And also when you identify uh, we can help you to identify when it's just a deficiency like this. You can see the tomatoes like this, and it's like, oh, it's sick. Something is eating my tomatoes, or I have some rot. In that case, it's a deficiency, calcium. The tomatoes they need calcium, and it's something like this. Or when you have too much water and the tomato just cracks and it opens by itself. So in that case, you don't have anything to control. It's just nutrition, or in this case, or controlling the amount of water. And we have something like botrytis that is like this. Of course, then is when we have something growing and affecting our plants, and we need to do something about that. We have gray mold. So now some extra tips from experienced master gardeners. We hear and every every year when people they are asking. So experience and research-based tips that we want to share with you. So early detection, it's the key. So it's easier, cheaper, more effective control. Take the pictures so you can see the change over time, and that helps us to identify and to help you identify the culprit. Uh, like I mentioned before, just when you have aphids, these tiny guys, these ones, just you can uh, wash the plant literally, or just wait for the rain, or with the hose, um, just watering the plants, and you can flush the aphids. And just be careful if you're using a hard blast of water, because that can also break the plant. So yeah, a hard blast of water, but not too hard that can break the plant. And for tomatoes, you can be pruning the lower leaves, because especially after you harvest the tomatoes, you don't need those leaves anymore. So you just harvest those leaves, and that allows the air circulation. And when you compost, you have any plant that it was affected by a mildew, by septoria, by any pest or disease, do not compost that. Don't add those diseased plants to the compost. And and also you can use different companion for the plants. So for example, basil, dill, marigold, they are pest deterrents. Not 100%, but they help to keep pests away from your garden. Don't overuse the sprays, because of course when you keep the same crop, the same, for example, tomatoes every year, and then spraying with the same product over and over again over years, uh, your your pests they are resistant. Like that's like that's not affecting them anymore. So in that case, that's good, the crop rotation and not using the same product all the time. And keep your garden journal, so that it's also nice for everything, fertilizing, harvesting, pest control, anything, just keeping track of what's happening in your garden. When you see just early detection that I have blight, I'm talking about blight, talking about the gray mold, like this one, something like the right picture, gray mold. So, okay, just remove that early and throw that far from your property, not right there next to the garden. In just a garbage can or burning that plant and get rid of that plant early. So early detection, that helps you. For any insects that they can be flying around, the sticky traps, they are always like something that it helps for the garden. And usually those are cheap to just and easy to install around your plants. And do not over fertilize your plants. So if you don't know the current nutrition of your soil, take the soil sample. We can teach you how to take the sample and send the sample to us. We send that to the laboratory, and you know exactly the health condition for your soil. How healthy is your soil? So in that case, you know exactly if you need to fertilize or not. Because when you have excess of, especially nitrogen, that attracts the aphids. They love that. So in that case, that helps too. And yeah, it's 12 and 10, so we went 10 minutes after 12. I'm sorry about that. A lot of information for a short session. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask right now, or even like I mentioned before, you can take the pictures and let us know what's going on and send to this. This is my email, cfa34@cornell.edu. And sometimes we take some time to answer because we have every day there are new emails coming. But yeah, can contact or bring your samples to the office. For Allegheny County, we are located in Belmont, New York. You can find the address in allegany.cce.cornell.edu. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask right now. And if not, maybe you remember later, or when something is going on with your plants, anytime, even during the winter for indoor plants, you can contact us any time of the year. And yeah, or local farmers markets, always you can find our master gardeners there. And they are always happy to help. We are always happy to help. So I hope this is helpful for you. Thank you for being here. And I hope your gardens thrives this summer. So, no more questions. I'll see you in the next session.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.